morning. Welcome to the Old School, a podcast about a litany of things, not least of which might be education, culture, history, sports. One day we'll get into sports. We keep teasing sports episodes, but maybe it never happened. Who knows? Maybe we'll talk about how ridiculous Aggie fans are, for example.
Don't do
Do
that.
that.
Don't do
That
that.
that'll make a fun episode.
You're trying to start the show and you're attacking a nice group of people.
They're nice, but they're horribly illogical. And with that, we'll say good morning to Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
Hello, here, Miller. I know where my bread is buttered. I don't publicly or privately say anything about Texas A&M, and I'm also paying that university handsomely right now, along with Baylor University, if you must know. So I'm not.
Did you tell your children, hey, listen, I want you to pick the most expensive places to go because really
Oh,
you guys are worth it, you know. So
yeah, no, it's
where's your last kid going to go? TCU or Rice? But let me tell you something. The A&M fans, I love them, and they're I got friends of mine that are A&M fans, but they are just ridiculous.
no, I think you're being unfair. I mean, I went to the game last week, Alabama. It was a joyful experience. I'll say one thing. I mean, you've never went to
Yes,
a game at Kyle Field. It's
I've
a
never.
whole afternoon, whole morning. You know, the tradition and the corps coming out and marching to the field, and but the fans are so pleasant and they're so well behaved. There's no nonsense at all. I mean, there's just you go to other college football games and people are being idiots, but they're well mannered, and they wave towels and do their yells, but it's a beautiful thing. I was really taken by it. We had 108,000 strong, rooting against Alabama, and they don't lose games. They just run out of time. That's true.
I think that was the South's argument. They didn't lose the war; they just ran out of ammunition, or they ran.
It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing, but it was
Wow.
it was a valiant effort, and they'll be back today. So
Well, we'll see. You know, by the time this podcast comes out, they could have potentially lost two more games. You know, so we'll see. We'll see what happens
what do you
at
have
that point.
have against them? I don't understand.
I don't have anything against them except for the fact that I just I've never heard of a team that is so confident in winning, but so seldom does it. You know,
Well,
it's like Cubs fans. I mean, before they won the World Series, I never met a more arrogant group of fans as Cubs fans, and they hadn't won in like a century.
no,
And
they're in the
when's the
SEC.
last time A&M won a championship game?
I don't know, but they're in the SEC. They have competition every week, um, and they're not unlike your metaphor of whatever that is. The Dallas Cowboys have the same issue. They win
Yes,
one
exactly.
game, get back-to-back games, and they're buying Super Bowl tickets.
And they haven't won the Super Bowl in going on 30 years.
Yeah, back
The
where we both
Cowboys
lived.
are the Aggies of the NFL.
None of that. This is bad. Talk about something else because I'm not enjoying bashing Texas A&M.
That's because you have people to answer to. Sure, problem.
No, no,
So
it's a wonderful place there.
it is a wonderful place, and the people are wonderful.
Yes,
They're just
there you
they're a
go.
little
So
off. So we'll
we
leave it
finally agree, Herr Miller.
there. We had a fall break. Now, typically, before I retired, fall break amounted to like a long weekend.
Yeah,
This year, it was a full week off. And so the the National Park Service has a program where fourth graders and their families get in free during the course of the kids' fourth grade year. And so we decided to head out to Colorado, and we went to Great Sand Dunes National Park. We went to Black Canyons of the Gunnison National Park, and then we ended up at Mesa Verde National Park. And so we'll do three more in spring break in Utah. But I was in Colorado for this past week, and I like the idea of my kid enduring road trips.
enduring. That's a good word.
Yes.
Yeah.
well, I have to endure it. I'm the one behind the wheel, but I mean, I think it's important for her to endure it. And so she only gets 1 hour of screen time when we're driving.
So you're torturing her during the trip.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think it's a key skill to learn how to deal with boredom
And suffering.
and suffering.
Okay.
Now,
She's
and
in
for
fourth
her,
grade. She's in fourth grade, right?
she's in fourth grade.
Okay. And
She's
so
already
next
taking
year,
up the
when you go to Utah, isn't that what you said the following year? She's still going to be in fourth grade because you want to get the favorable
yeah.
service. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to
I
get
mean,
that
why
out
wouldn't
there
you?
because I wasn't sure if she was in the fourth grade or you just wrote that in the form, but she's actually in fourth grade.
No. She's in the fourth grade. She'll be in the fourth grade during spring
Okay.
break next year, and it goes from August to August. So she could have started going to national parks in August,
Okay.
and we have until August of next year to go to any national park we want to. And I imagine we'll probably hit a couple over the summer,
Sounds
but
like
maybe closer to home, or maybe we'll go east next time. Although I don't, you know,
you've been everywhere, Herr Miller. I don't know if there's anything new under the sun.
well, I have not been to as many national parks as one might think I would have, and my daughter even less so. So I think it's for me, it's kind of an opportunity to see her kind of explore some of these places. You know, we've been to a lot of spots. We've been to the Dakotas. We've been to the Badlands National Park in South Dakota. We've been to a lot of places, Rocky Mountains.
So you flew to those places and stayed in
No,
hotels. No,
drive,
drive. That's a long.
drive.
It's a lot of
It
drive.
is a long drive, but it's how my family experienced travel. And um, I mean, I guess we could afford flights, but I think there's something to be gained from seeing the miles pass by. I think so. But and one of the reasons why I brought it up is one, because that's what I've been doing for the last week. But two, something we've touched on briefly as part of a longer episode dealing with kind of different variable models of education. I wanted to dedicate an episode to the notion of outdoor education,
Outdoor education,
outdoor education.
like outdoor school. They used to take kids who were having behavior problems and they put them in a program. They did, ropes courses and team
Oh,
building.
boot camp.
Yeah. I love it. So that's what
Uh,
I'm picturing. Is that what you mean?
do you see the out now? This is going to be funny. I mean, do you see the outdoors as a punitive exercise?
Well, for me personally, I love nature. Don't get me wrong, but I don't like to be in it. I'd rather watch it from inside a my house. I'm quite happy looking out the door. I don't like wildlife. I don't like bugs. But
You
I
don't find the majestic beauty of a deer or bear strolling
no,
across a field?
I'd be happy to. I've never actually seen a bear. I don't think I probably have it, but I sure don't want to see one when I'm out in their territory. That seems really stupid to me.
But the problem is that you, a self-professed indoor cat,
Yeah,
you hail from two of the most scenic, naturally blessed regions of our country, the UP in
yeah.
Upper Michigan and Oregon. How in God's name does someone who is the product of those two places turn into an indoor cat? I don't understand.
No, I loved it there. I went fishing. I spent a lot of time at the coast, the Oregon coast. I was outdoors all the time, and obviously I played tennis and did things. So I was outdoors a lot there. We lived in Michigan, not when I was born there, but we lived there for a year, around 2000, and I was out a lot. I mean, I played golf. We traveled a lot and just spent a lot of time outdoors. It's just Texas,
But
and
you're
it's
just an indoor cat in Texas.
yeah, it's the heat and they have things that start with the letter S that crawl around or bite you or do
Slither
something.
around.
Either way, I don't ever want to deal with that, and so it's prohibitive to me and to go around hiking or whatever. Just I mean, it's the state itself, so you need to be more in the north, I think, but and then I would be quite happy being outdoors.
So when you think about something like outdoor education,
Mhm.
can you, given your current status, can you envision benefits of outdoor education? Not specific to a particular subject, but simply the notion of creating a curriculum by which you are learning concepts of a particular subject outdoors. Do you find any inherent benefits to that?
I don't really understand it. I mean, if you're trying to learn about nature and do biology and do studies out there, that's almost like a extended field trip. But that is part of the curriculum. But it sounds like you're talking about what every kid asks, every spring. Can we have class outside?
Yeah.
And I didn't do that. Maybe you were the kind of teacher who said, "Yeah, let's get outside and get in a circle and talk about history." But I was pretty good at resisting that. Is that what you're thinking, or studying the outdoors? Which of the two?
Well, I think you can look at it in both ways. One, the idea of yes, there's certain assignments that you can do that are conducive to being outdoors, like you mentioned, biology or science, or what have you, where those things kind of make sense. I think there's actually also mathematical
Mhm.
elements in nature that you could use to kind of talk about certain concepts or what have you. But do you think it's not possible that people learn better outside of the rather staid, sterilized kind of environs of a cinder block classroom? Is there something to be said that you get more when you're surrounded by an environment that engages you more?
Um, well, the type of schooling that we typically see is that you have these lights flickering above, and there are no windows in the classroom, and you're definitely isolated. And so you
Yeah.
see the outdoors, when you go to school, and then when you leave the building. So first of all, having open spaces, in the campus windows. But on the West Coast, I mean, they had more like campuses for the high schools. Uh,
Mhm.
a security nightmare, by the way. But you had breezeways that in the front of the school, you could just, it was pretty much an open campus, and you couldn't control. I mean, now I mean, everywhere they kind of have a single entry for good reason, but it's
Mhm.
following more of a prison model. Um, so the idea of opening it up, realistically, if you can, you would probably need to be out on a location that's set up for that, specifically.
Okay, so let's say you have something of that ilk.
Sure.
And can you envision a natural benefit to simply learning? Not necessarily anything specific to the outdoors, but can you envision benefits to learning while outdoors?
I love universities and the idea of walking to the library, walking. So to me, it's more about those transitional times, but the idea of sitting out with your notes or your laptop, and hearing a lecture or doing activities while it's a bit windy, and um, I wouldn't get excited about that.
Because one of the things I've kind of noticed is that my daughter,
Mhm.
who is, I think we can all agree, a remarkable child, if
Yes,
for no other reason but that she's my child.
you wanted me to agree because it's true, and
Yes, I don't want you to
I
lie.
can understand it, with because of your wife, but your contribution is quite frankly a little surprising that she's turned out so well.
Well, I think we can all agree on that. But, my child is different indoors than she is outdoors. And when I noticed her, at the parks, she would do things
Mhm.
that she probably would not do indoors. She's more inquisitive. She is more attentive. Now, I will grant you that this is a double-edged sword because I think if you don't have firm control of your classroom, being outdoors is a horrible idea.
It's-
Because if you don't have control of your classroom, your kids are going. It's going to be like Lord of the Flies. I mean, it's going to be a horrible idea. But if you have the ability to kind of control the classroom, if you have that classroom management style, I wonder if that how that translates as far as a kid being able to learn, because I look at my kid and she seems more engaged outdoors. She seems more in tune with what's around her in outdoors, as opposed to her being inside either our house or presumably the classroom. And I'm wondering if there's something that we can't use to kind of juxtapose out to, into a kind of a regular classroom setting to get kids outdoors, and maybe they benefit as a result of it.
So have you done this? Have you actually taught history outside?
Yes. I mean, I did it with my kids. I did, when my students brought up the notion of, can we go outside? I didn't necessarily take it as something to kind of, you know, convince them otherwise of. I was all for it. And I found that, when we went outside, yes, there's wind, yes, there's noise, there's other things that kind of make the experience less than ideal. But I also found that they were more into it. One, because I think they think they're getting away with something,
Yeah.
or they think they're getting what they want. But in the end, I also get what I want, you know. And I remember because I had a certain reputation as a teacher, and I think we talked about this the last time we briefly talked about outdoor education. I had a certain reputation as a teacher, as a kind of a strict, no nonsense kind of teacher. And I remember I had a teacher came out and saw me with my students, and they're all sitting around like in small groups discussing some questions I had them to discuss. And I'm basically laying on the grass in the middle of all the kids with my hands behind my head with
Oh
my
my
eyes
God.
closed, laying in the sun.
What an image that is, here, Miller.
Well,
And
my teacher friend said, well, what the world are you doing? I said, I'm not doing anything. The kids are talking about
I'm,
history,
I'm
you know?
teaching. Uh,
He said, yeah, well, I was teaching because I was listening to what the kids were saying because they're right around me.
yeah.
And so if there's someone starting to get off task, I'd say, hey, how about, hey, so and so, how about you ever thought about this, And so I could, because I was in the midst of all of them, I didn't necessarily have to be patrolling, you know, but rather just being there and being able to hear. I was able to kind of keep their conversations going. And it was a much more relaxed atmosphere. I think there's something inherently potentially restrictive inside of a classroom because it's not a natural setting.
No, it isn't. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of touring with students and having that tour guide stopping and talking, and very difficult to hear. And the kids are standing around, not necessarily engaged, except for a couple of people in the front. Uh,
Right.
but I would love to see you lying down, just relaxing, sipping some lemonade or something while your students
Sipping
are
lemonade. I'm just kind
talking,
of
about Plato or whatever they were talking about. Um, no, I mean, you have a serious idea here, but I mean, how could it be implemented, today with all the concerns of managing a classroom?
well, it's more than just that. I think as a result and as a response to COVID,
Hmm.
I think a lot of schools started doing stuff outdoors,
Yeah, that's right.
if for no other reason but to keep 30 kids from being crammed into a classroom.
Yeah,
But I think what some people may have envisioned as a temporary addressing of a concern didn't really carry over, as far as like what it could be beyond those concerns. And now there are different concerns. There's some schools in, I think it was Madison, Wisconsin, that basically up and canceled some of their outdoor programs. And it had a lot to do with liability. Within the school, there was a certain kind of, set liability measures that are taking place within the school to make sure nothing bad happens to kids. And once you go outside those doors, that security vanishes. And I think it freaked out some of the school districts. And, for example, in Madison, Wisconsin, where they said, well, we can't do this. We need to get them indoors.
yeah,
And I think because of a combination of the rather litigious nature of our culture in conjunction with, the risk adverse kind of nature of school boards and school districts and school administrations, I think it runs the risk of destroying a lot of outdoor programs. But there's too many people out there making studies about what it means to be educated and what it means to be outdoors while in the process of being educated. Um, who is the Finnish educator that we both follow? Um,
Sahlberg.
Solberg. I mean, he's talked a lot about this as well. But I just wonder if there's not an advantage in going more towards that instead of going away from
Yeah, I would say it depends on the teacher. You know, I mean, a lot of teachers would grumble about that, but given the option to do it, you know, some would probably take them up on it and do a heck of a job. Um, I can't remember too many days per year that I want to be outdoors at all in Texas. You know, any
it.
season. You know, maybe there's a few days in November,
Mm.
but then it gets cold or it's ridiculously hot. But I feel like I'm complaining about everything right now. I'm in a complaining mood. Actually, for the last 10 years or so, you know, I've become a curmudgeon. And now that you're retired, we're like those guys in the Muppet Show. I think that's exactly what we are at this point.
Statler and Waldorf, I think is the name. So,
Really?
well, there's an obvious cure for your curmudgeonness, and that's retiring for good. Uh,
What
but
does that
you've
mean?
got your kids going to every expensive college in Texas, and so you're in for the long haul. You know,
I didn't mean to
you may
reveal.
die in that seat.
I was not. Oh, come on! I didn't mean to reveal personal details. We should edit that out here, Miller.
But I think I I go back to looking at my daughter outdoors. And I think if you're talking about what kind of traits you seek to create within students, I think there's something to be gained from the ideas about being outdoors. Now, yes, some locales have different problems with regards to that.
Mhm.
Whether it be Texas in the summer, in August, the beginning of the school year, or whether it's Minnesota, almost the entirety of the school year. I mean, there's some challenges, but you know, different cultures who emphasize this have different philosophies about it. Our friends over in Germany, is that expression. There's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. And so the notion that you go outside, you just dress appropriately for it. There's no reason to kind of fear being outside, even if the weather is not ideal. And so whether you talk about endurance, whether you talk about handling adversity, whether you talk about the notion of being observant, and how many times have you heard complaints that our kids are not terribly observant because they're in the same atmosphere day in, day out, 8 hours a day. It doesn't encourage observation, it doesn't encourage curiosity. If you're outdoors, maybe that does.
You'd have to pry the phone out of their hands for sure. I mean, I worry, you know, in the parking lot driving my daughter to school, and the kids are staring
Mm-hmm.
at their phone. They don't even look up when they cross the street.
Yeah.
You know, so I think if you can pry the cell phone out of their hands so they can actually be present outdoors, you'd have a better chance of getting the effect you want.
So you're saying that it is possible?
No, I don't think so. No, I think it's a security challenge. You would have to train the students from kindergarten on to know how to handle themselves there and not just start frolicking. I mean, it reminds me of what you want to do when we would drive home from work together every day. If you wanted to stop by a field, I don't know why you
Just
kept asking
run
me.
around.
Yeah, you wanted to just, I don't know what you would have actually done if I'd have pulled over.
I'd
Um,
have gotten out and ran around.
yeah, like with your arms out, just run around and then come back to the car. Are we ever going to come back, or are you just going to keep going?
Sure. No,
Really?
I'd come back. But what I'm saying is, I think being outside allows the student, both literally and figuratively, to be outside themselves.
Hmm.
And I think it allows them, it gives them permission to function a little bit differently. I think in a classroom where you have been since you were knee high to a grasshopper, as someone probably said, that there's like a certain expectation of behavior, and that behavior and the demands for that behavior does not change. I think being in an atmosphere where constantly both the behavior being asked and the demands being asked differ, I can't help but think that that's probably better for the kid.
Well, I think anything to, I mean, the thing about a school classroom is that nothing can be more plugged in anymore. I mean, the internet is churning away, and technology is present in the classroom. I think your classroom is was relatively pared down from technology, and but being outdoors, you could definitely be away from that, which is nothing but a good thing. You know, I think we would agree that any way to not be looking at a screen is an improvement.
So therefore, then how do you overcome the obstacles, be it litigious, be it security, be it, a whole host of things, maybe facilities or available facilities. It seems like most school districts have some sort of outdoor learning center. Certainly maybe the larger school districts have them.
Yeah.
Um, so how do you overcome those obstacles of people who just want to do as it's always been done?
I've visited schools where they have spaces like that are actually set up for the class to go in and learn there, but it's still within the compound of a building with one entrance, for security.
Mm-hmm.
But then they have these spaces that don't have a roof, and they're definitely outdoors, and they have nature. They involve the kids in the gardening or whatever is needed. But I think that's what you would need to do, is set it up purposefully as an architectural challenge, as opposed to letting the students run wild and free out there, which to me that's a scary idea, because you wouldn't be the only teacher in the school doing that, and suddenly I don't know, I'm picturing kids running around and yelling and chasing each other, and like recess essentially all day.
Well, I think if the teacher's plan, if it said in their planner book, Tuesday, U.S. history, allow the kids to go outside and run around and play grab ass or whatever, just act like a fool.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree that's probably a bad plan.
Okay, I thought you were
But I mean,
doing that and saying, yeah, that would.
no. But what I'm saying is that if that's if the but rather if the plan is to get something out of being outdoors.
Yeah.
And now someone may complain you're just being outdoors for the sake of being outdoors. Well, I'm being asked to use technology just for the sake of using technology. You tell me in the end how which direction will the kid be better off, without being outside or without technology? I would say without technology, they'd probably be better off.
Well,
And so
they'll have an experience that's different, than what they usually get in school, and it might wake them up.
I think the key, though, as you said, I think this has to start from the get-go,
Mhm.
so that the kid can be used to being outside and still be focused and still be productive and still kind of follow instructions. I think that the kid that has to happen starting from kindergarten.
Yeah. And and then you could design a school that would purposefully make that possible. So it's not just a rarity when the weather's nice and some teacher gets a wild hair, but it's planned, and you reserve these different spaces by class. And Mr. Miller would be signing up for most of the days. I could picture that. But they would have to get used to it, meaning it's not just one thing, but we're doing this constantly as part of what we do. And then they can maybe focus on learning history and not just the experience of being out of the classroom.
And I do think that there are natural hurdles to overcome. If you're talking about a 3,000 plus high school body,
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be some natural problems with having, I mean, it would have to be staggered, or it's something that would have to be done to kind of plan that out. And certainly it's not something that can maybe be done every day, but at least once a week or maybe twice a week, you had the opportunity to do something outdoors or be outdoors and, I do understand the logistical aspect. What concerns me is what's happening in Wisconsin, for example. I think it's happening in other places as well, where the litigious or the security aspect of a school becomes the most important determiner as to what happens in the school. And to me, that doesn't make any sense.
So they're concerned about security and kids getting injured, and um, whereas they have a lot more control over the movements of the students in a classroom setting.
Well, I would think, if you talk about a typical high school,
Yeah.
I think from an administrative point of view, it's all about control, is it not?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that's how the school day is designed
Right.
for sure.
Now, someone listening might say, well, there you go. That's why we don't have a bunch of kids outdoors, because you can't control it.
Yeah.
But I think that there's something to be said for having a different understanding of what it means to control. How you interact with the students, how you relate to them. You know, I mentioned this before. There was a great line when Wade Phillips was hired as the Cowboys head coach. And they asked him, how do you plan on controlling all these big personalities in this team? And Phillips's response was, I'm not going to control them. I'm going to work with them. I don't control anybody. And so I think if you take that and you juxtapose it within an educational environment, now I grant you this is not going to be easy, but I can't help but think that ultimately it might be better for the kids in the long term to have something like this.
Well, this is the second time we've talked about this in some ways, and you seem passionate about it. Um, I'm not sure you could study it and find out places that actually do this intentionally. And I would guess that they create, like you said, a center, something, within that, because a school campus can be pretty big,
Yeah.
and to have an area that's designated that, for that might be the solution.
I think what makes it difficult to convince people of is that in most cases where this is done to a great degree,
Mhm.
it's either a very small school,
Right.
it's a very tailored school, or it's run by a bunch of hippies, and
Hippies?
then people
What do you
think,
have against hippies?
I
I
got
grew up
nothing against
around
hippies.
hippies. The hippies are
I,
still in Oregon where I grew up.
I
They never
have
left.
nothing against hippies, but I think people take a derogatory kind of notion
Yeah,
to
hippie.
this kind of sit out and sniff the flowers kind of, give peace a chance or whatever. I think people kind of associate a certain demographic
Yeah.
with the notion of outdoor education. And it's asinine. When I see my daughter's happier outdoors.
Okay.
And I can't, if you can translate that into an educational experience, then I think what people are reacting to is that it's such a change from how they experience education.
Like, I think
It's
retirement has changed you because you never you talked about student happiness. In fact, you talked about the opposite. You wanted them to suffer and persist. And now you're talking about frolicking outdoors and happiness. This is not the Ross Miller I know.
See, that's similar to people who take the statement there should be no tests
Yeah.
as being there's no rules. It's like the old, Little Caesars commercial. There's no rules, and start taking off the shirt and there's one rule, you
I
put
don't
your
even
shirt
remember that commercial.
on. But the notion that just because you're doing away with one thing does not mean you're doing away with everything. I mean, I think you could be just as rigorous,
Mhm.
however you choose to define that word, that you can be just as rigorous and just as demanding in an outdoor environment. But the idea behind it is that in the outdoor environment, you have the potential of the kid being more engaged than simply sitting in a row of desks within fake air conditioned air being pumped out at you the entire time. I think there's a potential for something better to be done.
Well, there are schools that have an outdoor element, specifically to serve students who maybe are struggling. I've heard of one where they have horses and they do that in the morning, and then the afternoon they do traditional school. Um,
Right.
but it could be that a charter school with that as part of their program,
Mhm.
getting kids outside would be the best bet. Because doing transitioning an existing school system would be really difficult. But I think build it from the ground up.
Yeah, because I think if you couch it that way, the immediate out will always be, well, they can do it, but we're too big, we can't do it. I
Yeah.
think you have to kind of restructure things.
Okay.
And granted, maybe this is pie in the sky kind of
No,
discussion.
no, it's a great idea. And
There's
now that you framed it differently, that this could be a experimental school, but that is one of their key values is to get kids
Mhm,
out of out of the building, unplug them as much as possible, and have
mhm.
shared open spaces where people can walk around. Uh, it sounds idyllic, and I think if we investigated, there are schools like that. I mean, the school we've what's it called? It's this free democratic school in Massachusetts. Can't remember what it's called, but there's an outdoor element to that school as well.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of different things you can do. The poet once wrote that out in the desert, there's nothing but sand and God. And I think being outside, you have the potential of going into areas that maybe you would not ordinarily be able to go because maybe it allows for discussions the likes of which can't happen within the classroom, within a typical standard traditional classroom. And so, I mean, if Thoreau was right, that it's only by being outdoors that we can truly be in touch with who we are. You know, if it's right, as G.K. Chesterton said, that, whatever you can say of man, man is not what he was meant to be. Maybe there's something to be gained by doing something different as far as how you educate, how you train, how you mold and shape the generation to come.
I like this, Herr Miller. So you took a road trip, and suddenly you're proposing something pretty radical. But I'm curious, to hear what other people think about this idea. I mean, I'm kind of taking my devil's advocate role, and
Sure.
also I'm not much of an outdoor person, and I would be not happy with my students. It's tough enough in a classroom to
Mm-hmm.
manage a class and be effective. So it brings a lot of things, under this roof of discussion because it's massive change you're talking about.
It is massive change, but I think you begin small.
Hmm?
Whether it's I think the National Fish and Wildlife Organization has kind of funded fishing programs, across the country. They started like 50 new ones in Florida, for example.
Yeah,
And you have these small entries into the natural world,
love it.
and then you build from there. I think there's a way that you can do this. But I think, as you said, if you want to do it like a wholesale kind of a thing, it does have to start from the beginning because the kids have to be trained to be outside and still be productive. The teachers have to be trained to be outside and still have some sentiment of control over, what your kid is doing. It's the same dangers as the kids on a computer. We talked about the notion that it's harder to teach than it is to learn because you have to just let learning take place, and the same dynamics happens outside as well. And so the teachers need to be trained, the kids need to be trained. We are talking about a very and the fact that you call it radical may suggest that it can never happen. But I think if you can do it on smaller levels and introduce it incrementally, is that right? Is that the right word? Incrementally? If you can do it in that way, maybe you've got a chance of creating something different and, dare I say, better.
You may.
Okay.
Uh, uh, well, thank you, here, Miller. An interesting topic that you brought on, and I'm glad that we spent some time. We'll probably come back to it next time you travel, after next summer or whatever. And
Maybe you'll come with us the next time. You're
on a
willing
trip.
to shed that indoor cat persona, and you're ready to be a different man, a new man, a better man.
Better,
I don't know.
bigger, stronger, faster. Yes.
We can rebuild them. We can make them better. It's another old reference for all the old folks
Everything
in
we
the
say is
audience.
old. Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's another weekend, more college football, baseball playoffs.
Oh, that's true. Rangers
Yeah.
won a series, didn't they?
Yes.
Oh,
It is remarkable that that series where they beat my beloved Orioles
they beat them. They won.
happened when
Yeah.
it happened while I was basically out of cell range. I mean, I couldn't see anything, I couldn't hear anything,
It's for the
and
best, I guess. But I was going to text you. I just didn't want to, um, because you were enjoying nature, and it would have been a distraction to hear the every inning. Here's what's happening.
I like to think it was a sign of our friendship that she didn't want to bring me down at the moment when I was experiencing such exalted environs and experiences.
I wasn't that into it. I mean, I was thinking the Rangers are winning a series, and then I thought, oh, wait a minute, they're playing the Orioles. Okay,
Yes.
mixed message, but they're your second favorite team. So now you're going to take off the orange and put on whatever color the Rangers are using these days.
Blue is what they
'Cause that's what you're
always
wearing
use.
now. Are you wearing a Ranger shirt now?
I'm not wearing a Ranger shirt now.
Oh,
It's actually a Savannah, Georgia shirt.
oh,
But we were there a couple years ago on vacation. So,
all right,
but
everyone.
no. So yeah, so I gently donned the Orioles cap, set it down, put it in this nice little exalted place. Pick up the Rangers hat, put that on, and now I'm riding the Rangers through the playoffs to the World Series.
Okay.
Finally, the ghost of Nelly Cruz in 2011 will be exorcised, and the Rangers will have won
Are you
the
able to
series.
even say that? I mean, that it feels like you're breaking rules, talking about that when we have two more
I'm
series
in,
to go.
I'm envisioning success. All the pop psychologists say that that's the way to become successful is that you visualize success. And
Okay.
so I'm envisioning success for the Rangers in hopes that they win the World Series.
Here's hoping. I'm pulling. Yeah. Be right behind you every step of the way.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
With that rather sarcastic show of support, we shall bid adieu. Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
Auf Wiedersehen, Herr Miller.